For nearly 2 decades, Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban looked like Hollywood's most unshakable couple. Red carpets, award shows, and public declarations of love painted a picture of a perfect marriage. But behind the flashes and smiles, something far more complicated was happening, something that would eventually tear everything apart. And according to new reports, the quiet force that pushed Nicole to finally walk away wasn't a Hollywood agent or a close friend. It was her daughter. When Nicole Kidman filed for divorce in late September 2025, most fans were stunned. She and Keith had just celebrated another anniversary that summer. But insiders say that by then, their relationship had already ended privately months earlier. The tension had been building for years. Emotional distance, constant work schedules, and Keith's rumored personal struggles created cracks that no one on the outside could see. Still, Nicole stayed, until someone she deeply trusted told her it was time to stop pretending. Everything was fine. That person was Isabella. Bella Cruz, Nicole's oldest daughter from her marriage to Tom Cruise. For years, Bella kept her distance from the Hollywood spotlight, living a quiet life in London, far from cameras and headlines. But this year, Nicole spent the entire summer in the UK, reconnecting with her daughter after what many fans thought was a permanently broken bond. Sources say those moments in London were emotional. Long conversations, shared memories, and quiet tears that reopened old wounds. And somewhere in those heart-to-hearts, Bella reportedly told her mother something that changed everything. "You deserve peace." It was the kind of truth that hits hard, not as judgment, but as love. Bella had seen her mother's sadness up close. She had also seen the version of Nicole that the world never saw, tired, fragile, and ready to stop fighting for a marriage that no longer made her happy. For Bella, it wasn't about revenge or bitterness. It was about giving her mother the strength to move forward. By the time Nicole returned to the U.S., she was done pretending. She filed for divorce just weeks later, and the news made headlines everywhere. But what most people didn't realize was that this decision wasn't born in a lawyer's office. It began in a daughter's heart, and yet, this was only the beginning. Because the real question wasn't just why Nicole left Keith Urban. It was what brought her and her long-lost children back together after so many years apart. When Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban first met in 2005, their chemistry was undeniable. It was the kind of Hollywood love story everyone wanted to believe in. Two Australians, both global stars, finding each other at the height of their fame. Nicole had just rebuilt her life after her painful split from Tom Cruise, and Keith was a rising country music superstar with charm and vulnerability that audiences adored. Together, they seemed unstoppable, a power couple destined to last. In public, they radiated love. Keith would call Nicole his lifeline, and Nicole often said that marrying Keith healed her heart after years of emotional isolation. Fans saw passion, laughter, and deep affection, but behind that carefully crafted fairy tale, a quieter truth was unfolding. Keith's career was exploding, and with that came endless touring, late nights, and temptations that no marriage could ignore. In the early days, Nicole was patient. She stood by him through his struggles with addiction, even when he entered rehab just 4 months after their wedding. It was a moment that could have broken them. But instead, Nicole chose to stay, hoping that love could fix what fame had fractured. For years, it seemed to work. They raised 2 beautiful daughters, Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret, and appeared at every red carpet event with that same spark in their eyes. Yet, the distance between them quietly grew. Keith's life on the road kept him away for months at a time, while Nicole's acting career, filled with demanding roles and emotional intensity, pulled her in a different direction. They were still partners, but they had stopped being teammates. Insiders say that by 2023, things had changed completely. The couple began living separate lives, polite in public, distant in private. Friends described Nicole as lonely, even when surrounded by people. She threw herself into work, shooting back-to-back projects, while Keith focused on music tours that kept him far from home. Still, Nicole tried to hold on. She'd built her life around the idea of family, something she'd lost once, with Tom Cruise and didn't want to lose again. But this time, love wasn't enough. Keith's emotional unavailability, and the ghosts of old. Pain made her realize she was repeating a pattern, loving men who lived in their own worlds, while she stood on the outside looking in. When the official news broke that Keith and Nicole had separated earlier this year, fans were shocked, but those close to her weren't. They'd seen the slow unraveling, the silent heartbreaks, the quiet nights when she'd cry alone. The fairy tale didn't explode in scandal. It simply faded, quietly, painfully, and without a dramatic ending. But the silence was about to be broken, because behind the headlines and heartache, there was one person who saw everything clearly, and she wasn't about to stay silent anymore. When Nicole Kidman's world began to quietly fall apart, there was one person she turned to, someone who'd seen her mother's heartbreak before, but from the shadows. Her daughter, Isabella Bella Kidman Cruz. Bella had lived most of her adult life out of the spotlight, tucked away in London, living a simple, grounded existence, far from the flashbulbs and red carpets that once defined her childhood. But when Nicole arrived in the UK that summer, away from Los Angeles, away from Keith, the reunion between mother and daughter carried a kind of unspoken healing. For years, the world believed Nicole had lost touch with her children from her first marriage to Tom Cruise. Rumors swirled that Scientology had created an invisible wall between them, that her kids were more aligned with their father's beliefs than their mother's love. Nicole never fought those stories publicly. She simply said she respected her children's choices and loved them unconditionally. But behind closed doors, that distance weighed heavily on her. And then came this summer, the summer that changed everything. Sources close to the family say Bella was the one who encouraged her mother to stop pretending that everything was fine. She'd seen the sadness in Nicole's eyes, the exhaustion from years of emotional compromise. Bella reportedly told her mother it was time to stop saving a marriage that no longer saved her. It wasn't easy for Nicole. She'd built her image on grace, loyalty, and quiet endurance. Leaving Keith would mean admitting to the world, and to herself, that love hadn't been enough to fix what was broken. But Bella's words hit deep. She reminded her mother that happiness isn't selfish, and that sometimes walking away isn't giving up. It's starting over. Friends of Nicole say she leaned on Bella like never before. They spent long afternoons talking, reconnecting, rediscovering each other. Bella had grown into a wise, independent woman, calm, grounded, and fiercely loyal. And in her daughter, Nicole saw something she hadn't felt in years: strength. When the divorce papers were finally filed, Bella didn't just offer comfort, she offered clarity. She reminded Nicole of who she used to be before the heartbreaks, before the spotlight, before all the noise. It's almost poetic. The daughter who was once distanced from her mother became the very person who helped her find herself. Again, insiders say Bella encouraged Nicole to take a hard stance to protect her peace, her dignity, and her legacy. It wasn't about revenge or anger. It was about freedom. And that freedom came at a cost. Because not everyone in the family agreed. One person in particular didn't share Bella's view, and his loyalty was still firmly with someone else. While Bella stood beside her mother during one of the most painful transitions of her life, Nicole's other child, Connor Cruz, remained caught in a different orbit, one that revolved around his father. Tom Cruise. Connor, now 30, had always shared a close bond with Tom. Unlike his sister, who built a quiet life in London, Connor chose to stay near his father's circle, loyal, protective, and deeply influenced by the world Tom built around him. He found purpose in the same Hollywood system that made and broke so many lives, and though he rarely spoke publicly, his actions said everything. When photos surfaced of Connor spending time with Tom in New York earlier this year, fans couldn't help but notice the timing. It was the same period Nicole was preparing to file for divorce from Keith Urban. The contrast was striking. While Nicole leaned on Bella for support, Connor seemed to be reaffirming his allegiance to his father, and that subtle division between Nicole's children has been whispered about for years. Those close to the family say that while Bella had started reconnecting with her mother, Connor remained distant, polite but emotionally unavailable. Some insiders claim his loyalty to his father and the Church of Scientology still shapes his view of Nicole. Others say it's less about religion and more about unresolved history, the complicated aftermath of two famous parents who once loved each other deeply, then fell apart under the weight of fame, belief, and betrayal. Nicole, for her part, has never spoken ill of Tom, not once. In interviews, she's always been diplomatic, saying, "He's the father of my children. I'll always wish him well." But those who know her say the silence hides decades of heartache. She lost more than a marriage. She lost access to the two people who mattered most to her for years, Bella and Connor. That's what made this recent shift so emotional. Reconnecting with Bella wasn't just about family. It was about redemption. It was proof that love could still bridge the distance that fame and belief had once created. But Connor, he wasn't ready. Reports claim he was uncomfortable with Nicole's growing bond with Bella's and skeptical about Keith Urban's role in it all. He allegedly believed Keith had been part of the problem all along. According to insiders, Connor and Bella never understood what Nicole saw in Keith. They saw her as the steady one, the one holding everything together, while Keith's demons often made her life harder. When he landed in rehab shortly after their wedding, both children reportedly questioned whether he was good enough for their mother. Now, with Keith gone, Bella seems relieved, but Connor remains cautious. In many ways, it's a family divided by history, one child helping her mother heal, the other still standing, in the shadow of a father who shaped their world. And as Nicole begins to reclaim her life, the question remains, can she ever truly rebuild that missing bond? Because the answer to that might depend on the one person who still controls the story's quiet power. Tom Cruise himself. No matter how far Nicole Kidman runs, one name always follows her like a shadow. Tom Cruise. It's been over 2 decades since their split, yet his presence still lingers in every corner of her story. Every interview, every rumor, every heartbreak, somehow, it always circles back to him. And now, with her marriage to Keith Urban ending, that shadow seems to have grown darker and closer. Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman were once Hollywood's golden couple, glamorous, untouchable, and impossibly in love. They met on the set of Days of Thunder in 1989, and by the early 90s, they were the power couple every magazine wanted. But what the public didn't see was the quiet tension behind the perfection. Rumors have always suggested that Tom's deep involvement with the Church of Scientology became the invisible wall between them. Nicole, raised Catholic and fiercely independent, reportedly struggled to understand the control the church had over her husband. And when their marriage fell apart in 2001, she didn't just lose a husband, she lost her children. Too, for years, people believed the church played a role in keeping Bella and Connor distant from their mother. The narrative was always the same: Tom's loyalty to the church and the church's disapproval of Nicole, who had become an outsider. Nicole never fought back publicly. She never exposed secrets or tried to defend herself. Instead, she chose silence, a silence that only deepened the mystery. But insiders say that silence broke privately this year. When her marriage to Keith began to unravel, Nicole reportedly reached out to both Bella and Connor, trying to rebuild something she had long believed was lost. Bella responded. Connor didn't. And that divide, many believe, still connects back to Tom. Friends close to Nicole describe her as haunted by how much of her life has been defined by her ex-husband's influence, even decades later. From her relationships to her children, to the way Hollywood still talks about her. Some sources even suggest that Nicole believes Keith's insecurities about Tom contributed to the tension in their marriage. He knew he'd never be her first great love, one insider said. That kind of shadow never truly fades. And perhaps it never will, even now. Tom remains a global icon, powerful, mysterious, and deeply private. He's seen as the devoted father, while Nicole has often been painted as the distant one. But those close to her know a different truth, that she's fought quietly for years to stay connected, even when the odds were stacked against her. It's poetic, almost tragic. The woman who won Oscars, conquered Hollywood, and redefined herself 100 times over. still fighting ghosts from a love story that ended more than 20 years ago. And as the dust settles on her marriage to Keith Urban, many are wondering, will this be the chapter where she finally steps out of that shadow? Because if there's one thing everyone agrees on, Nicole Kidman may bend, but she never breaks. Every love story has a breaking point. For Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban, it wasn't a single fight, a single betrayal, or a single rumor. It was a slow unraveling that began long before anyone noticed. From the outside, their marriage looked perfect. The Hollywood actress and the country music superstar. Two worlds, colliding in harmony. Red carpets, shared smiles, quiet family moments with their daughters Sunday and Faith. But behind those perfect photos, cracks were forming. Insiders say the first signs appeared around early 2023. Keith's touring schedule was relentless, months away from home. Late-night rehearsals, endless media obligations. Nicole, meanwhile, had been filming back-to-back projects overseas. The distance started small, then grew wider. By the time summer arrived, they were living separate lives. Friends say Nicole spent most of her time in London with her daughter Bella, while Keith was spotted solo in Nashville, looking tired and distant. According to reports, Nicole tried to reach him, emotionally, not just physically. She reportedly urged him to take a break, to focus on family. But Keith, ever the performer, buried himself in work. The cycle was familiar. After all, it wasn't the first time his career had come between them. Years earlier, in the early days of their marriage, Keith had entered rehab just 4 months after their wedding. Nicole stood by him through it all, calling it a test of love, and they made it through. Or so it seemed. But the truth is, those old wounds never really healed. They just hid beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to reopen. Sources claim that when Nicole returned home earlier this year, she found a husband she no longer recognized. The spark was gone. The communication, once effortless, had turned into polite distance. They weren't fighting, they were fading. One insider described it bluntly. They stopped being partners. They became roommates, and then came the whispers. Rumors that Keith was struggling again, and not necessarily with addiction, but with loneliness and resentment. Seeing Nicole reconnect with her past, with her daughter Bella, and even the shadow of Tom Cruise, reportedly stirred something in him. He felt like he was competing with ghosts. By May 2025, reports claim Keith was the one who first brought up separation. He allegedly told Nicole he needed space. Those words cut deep, because for once, it wasn't her leaving. Nicole filed for divorce months later, in September 2025, citing irreconcilable differences. But friends say the truth runs deeper. She had been holding their world together for years, and this time she simply let go. Still, the sadness was undeniable. Nicole has always been the kind of woman who loves with her whole heart, fiercely, completely. So when that love ends, it doesn't fade quietly. It echoes. And as her marriage to Keith crumbled, she faced one more unexpected twist. A surprising connection that would bring both pain and healing in the most unexpected way. Because sometimes when one door closes, another opens. Even if it's a door you thought you'd locked forever. After the storm came silence, the tabloids screamed headlines. Fans speculated and Hollywood whispered, but Nicole Kidman stayed quiet. She didn't lash out. She didn't post cryptic quotes. She didn't do interviews. Instead, she disappeared. Right when everyone expected her to speak, for months. She was seen only a handful of times, walking through London's grey streets. No entourage, no red carpets. Just her in a scarf wrapped tightly against the wind. But behind that calm surface, something powerful was happening. Nicole wasn't hiding. She was healing, and at the center of that healing was someone few expected. Her daughter, Bella Cruz. Sources say Nicole spent the entire summer in London, away from the chaos of Los Angeles. Staying close to Bella, the two reportedly spent long afternoons walking in Hyde Park, visiting art galleries, cooking together at home. For the first time in years, they were reconnecting as mother and daughter, not as the distant celebrity and the estranged child the media had painted them to be. Bella became her anchor, one insider shared. Nicole had been strong for everyone else for so long, but this time Bella was strong for her. And that bond changed everything. People close to Nicole say she began to rediscover pieces of herself she'd forgotten. The young woman who once loved fearlessly. The artist who used emotion as her strength, not her shield. Even her friends noticed the shift. She was softer, one said. She smiled differently. It wasn't the camera. Smile, it was real, while the world debated her. Divorce and speculated about her next move. Nicole found peace in the one place no one thought she would, the past. The daughter she'd once lost to silence had become her voice again. It wasn't about revenge or redemption. It was about closure. About finally understanding that some relationships end so others can heal. And as her bond with Bella grew stronger, her relationship with her younger daughters, Sunday and Faith, deepened too. For them, seeing their mother happy again, truly happy, was the closure they didn't know they needed. In quiet moments, Nicole reportedly spoke about how every heartbreak in her life had led her here. Every loss, every rumor, every lonely night on set. Maybe this was the universe's way of making things right, she told a close friend. But even as she rebuilt her emotional world, there was one person who still lingered in her story, one connection that had shaped her, hurt her, and yet somehow taught her everything about love and survival, because no matter how far she's come, the ghost of Tom Cruise still echoes in her life. And in the final chapter of this story, that shadow might just be the key to understanding who Nicole Kidman has finally become. Every ending hurts, but not every ending is tragic. For Nicole Kidman, this chapter isn't about loss anymore. It's about rediscovery. After nearly 2 decades of balancing Hollywood fame, motherhood, and the unpredictable tides of love, Nicole has finally done something she never truly allowed herself to do before. Stop running. Stop performing. Just breathe. In the weeks following her divorce filing, friends describe her as calm, centered, and strangely at peace. Gone were the tears and late-night phone calls that marked her earlier heartbreaks. This time there was acceptance, not the kind that comes from giving up, but the kind that comes from finally understanding your worth. Nicole has always been a survivor. From her painful split with Tom Cruise, to her years of silent distance from Bella and Connor, to standing by Keith through addiction and fame's chaos. But what makes her story powerful isn't the pain, it's her quiet grace through it all. She never fought her battles in public. She fought them in private, with dignity, and now she's channeling that strength into something new. Insiders say she's preparing to return to her artistic roots, not just as an actress, but as a producer and storyteller, determined to create projects that speak to women who've lived, loved, and lost like she has. She wants to tell stories about resilience, one close source revealed. She's done being the character. Now she wants to shape the story. Her personal life, too, has taken a new turn. Nicole has reconnected deeply with her daughters, all of them. Bella remains a grounding presence, while Sunday and Faith are stepping into their teenage years with a renewed bond to their mom. It's a quiet victory for a woman who once feared she'd lost her family forever. And while some fans speculate about whether Tom Cruise has reached out, those close to Nicole say that question no longer defines her. She's made peace with her past, whether or not the people in it ever change. Her focus now? The future. In her own words, from a recent interview, Nicole said, "You can't rewrite the past, but you can choose what story you tell next." It's the kind of wisdom that only comes from surviving the impossible and still finding beauty in what's left behind. Maybe she'll fall in love again. Maybe she won't. But for the first time in a long time, Nicole Kidman doesn't need to, because she's no longer defined by who she's with or who she lost. She's defined by what she's built, strength, peace, and a love that finally starts with herself. And perhaps that's the true ending of Nicole Kidman's story. Not heartbreak, not scandal, but freedom.